Noting the hour of 7:01, a quorum present, I call to order the planning board meeting for September 6th. Typically, the first meeting of the month, we agreed that it would be in person, and the second meeting of the month would be done remotely. Because of the primary, as everyone knows, that we switched it. So just make sure to remember the meeting on the 20th will be in person at our normal place. As a result of this being a remote meeting, any votes, and I don't know how many votes we're going to take, but any votes will be done by roll call. We do not have any minutes to approve, so we can skip right over that. I'm really not going to go through the agenda. I'm just going to go straight down the line because we don't have any hearings, we don't have any appointments. So the first order of business, the applicant for 124 Bogastow Brook, the applicant has asked for the discussion of the preliminary site plan review to be continued to September 20th. This doesn't require a vote, and I'll honor the request. We will continue this review to September 20th at 7:15 without deliberation. Does 7:15 work, Gino?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll put them in at 7:15. Next item, 90 Maple Street. On August 24th, there was a meeting with a prospective applicant for use of this property. Today's discussion is in its embryonic stages, so it's solely for information to the board, and I would prefer not to have a discussion about the merits of what's being presented. It is a very long way off, but I want to keep the board updated. So with that, Gino, give us an update of the meeting of August 24th, please.
Well, essentially, a solar developer is proposing to acquire the land and develop a solar facility on it. It would involve probably roughly half of the land area. There's no actual plan of the facility so far. He was just talking concepts and general possibilities. Part of it depends on what the capacity is to connect to the grid, whether it's 15 or 20 megawatts. But he did note that 50 acres would be would trigger a MEPA review. That's the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act. So unless there was really a compelling reason, he would like to keep it under, he would definitely go above 50 if he could get 20 megawatts, and that would be worthwhile. But unless he could get that, it would probably stay under 50. He's done this in a number of other towns. He has a project now in Shutesbury. He recently did one in Sandwich, and he mentioned a couple of other towns that I don't remember off the top of my head. So that's essentially it. There's a lot of details to come forward, and legal reviews and that sort of thing. So that's where it stands.
Okay, and obviously, I mean, this is a long way off from having any decisions being made, and as we go through the process, we'll keep the board updated. Ultimately, if something like this went through, it would require a zoning change, and so we will be very much in the loop. But there's a lot of people that are going to have input and decisions to be made. So again, it was a very initial discussion, and if the board has any super quick questions, feel free, but it's easy to have more questions than answers at this point. So if anyone has any questions for Gino, feel free.
Frank has his hand raised.
Okay, Frank, please.
Thank you. So the town has a solar voltaic overlay district, which is on page 10 of the assessor's map, parcel 1 and 1A. So is this not part of that?
Correct, it is not.
So there's still a desire, it seems like, by this zoning bylaw that we have 510, that there's encouragement for things like this in our town, but they would like for it to be in the solar voltaic overlay district. So would we have to create a new one of those? Is that the process would have to happen?
If the time, again, this is a very long way off, but that would be my understanding.
The desire of the proposer would be to work with the town to take whatever action is needed to make it happen if the town were to be supportive. And that one possibility would be to amend the zoning bylaw to add this area to the overlay district.
Thank you, Gino. Does anyone else on the board have any questions? Okay, we will keep everyone posted as meetings occur and as we move forward. Next item, update on the Roundabout and Complete Streets grant application. Again, this one's for Gino.
Okay, well, actually, Frank and I have been working on the application for the Roundabout for Complete Streets. We have the spreadsheet mostly completed and a narrative drafted. And then just this afternoon, Addie May and I met with Sean and Bill Scully, representing the consultant, on the status of the Sanger Street project, because that needs to be completed in order to apply, as well as the status of the information we need to apply, in particular, a cost estimate. And that's basically it. And it appears to be on track for the information we need. And Sanger Street, I usually mute when the phone rings, but I'm talking now. Sorry. Yeah, so the information seems to be on track for the Complete Streets application.
Okay, good. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Just a further comment that
Yep.
that Gino and my support of Gino's goal for getting the application turned in would be ahead of schedule, probably by about a week in submitting that project. And that meeting that we had, we also looked at several other potential grants, but we haven't located one in particular. But the one in particular is a possibility, but that starts up after the Complete Streets application is due. So we'll look at that further at that time.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank. Does anyone else have any questions? I just want to add that the sidewalk and the crosswalks down there look dynamite. So I'm very excited. As a matter of fact, I go out of my way to drive past it just to look at it. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple more comments, if I may. I don't want to get too much of our time.
That's okay.
If you have the opportunity, if you take that Maple Street and take it to just about its end into Ashland, which is that dog leg that goes onto Whitney Street. And then Whitney Street, when you go down the railroad tracks and then back up to the other side, when you go into Ashland, you hit the intersection of 126 and Whitney Street. I'm not sure what the name of the street is in Ashland, but it's Whitney Street in Sherborn. If you make a left, you go about 20 feet and you run into a roundabout. And the roundabout is a traffic circle just south of the light going back towards Holliston that gives you access to that Shaw's parking area with all those shops. And on the other side, that the development that they've been working on, which has become larger and larger. So it's a way to get the traffic from that development more smoothly onto 126. And it's right now working. They're still finishing it up. They're still doing some painting and signs. But the roundabout is actually in fact being used right now. So if you have the opportunity, check that out.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Any other comments? Okay. On August 11th, we received the final guidelines to determine compliance with Section 3A of the Zoning Act. So we've had it for several weeks. I asked Gino not to send it to the board because it was summer. So I'm gonna have Gino send the cover letter and the guidelines to the board. If the board would take a look at it, that would be great. Gino and I have a webinar with the state this Thursday at 1 o'clock. And then at our next meeting, I want to have sort of a robust discussion and question and answer. I don't want to do that today because we're going to get a lot more answers after Thursday. But I'm also going to ask Gino if he can just sort of give the board a quick update on the changes from the preliminary guidelines. If you would do that, Gino, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, the main changes that affect Sherborn, one was they created a new category. Remember, before we were an adjacent community, they still have that category, but they created an additional category called adjacent small towns. Sherborn is part of that. So the maximum, there's now a provision for affordable housing, which there was not in the original. However, it's limited to 10% of the number of units, with the possibility of going up to 20% if it's becomes a 40R district or another zoning incentive program that's approved by DHCD. There's no longer a minimum land area for small towns, which previously was 50 acres. No longer have that minimum. The minimum unit capacity, which previously was either 10% of the existing housing units or 750, whichever is greater, it's now been reduced to 5%, and there's no minimum. It's just a straight 5%, which for us comes to 78 units. The unit capacity does not need to account for water or wastewater infrastructure. And part of that, it's clarified that projects within the district must comply with Title V, even if that means the project will be less dense than 15 units per acre. There's a provision for sub-districts that there was already a provision for sub-districts, but they can have different density requirements as long as the total density equals 15 per acre. There's no restriction on the location of the district. We have to submit an action plan, which previously was due December 31st. It's now due January 31st, 2023. And the compliance application is now due December 31st, 2025. So we have a little time on that. And now, originally DHCD had said that you needed to approve a district and then they will decide if it complies or not. And now they have agreed that they would provide advice in advance before a vote, as long as it's submitted to them 90 days prior to a vote. So that's the major changes.
That last component of it makes a ton of sense, because imagine going to town meeting, going through this whole process and having them say, no, 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 that would have been a disaster. So that's good. So we have a webinar at 1 p.m. this Thursday, and I'm going to meet Gino at Town Hall. So if another board member wants to be a part of it, you're welcome to. I'm going to limit it to one other person just so, we don't have a quorum. So if anyone's interested, please let Gino know, number one. Number two, if while you're looking at the final guidelines, if you have any questions that you'd like to bring up at the next meeting, would you email them to Gino just so we can compile it? Because we could easily talk about it for hours and I'd prefer not to do that. So if we can compile any questions that the board has. Now at the last minute, if you have a question, I'm not going to say you can't answer, you can't ask it, but it would make it easier. And then after we discuss it on the 20th, we will present it to the select board. And I'm thinking that's early October. I don't know if we have a meeting yet, Gino, do we?
September 22nd.
Look at that. I'm going to change that early October to September 22nd. Okay. All right. Under consideration of potential capital items or warrant articles. In the past year, basically, I just want to get everyone sort of up to speed, get them thinking less about the beach and more about planning board stuff. So I'm going to go through a list. I'm going to have Gino comment on a few of them. Some of these are going to be warrant articles. Some of them we've already talked about it and they're probably not going to be. But just because they had been mentioned in the past, I'm just going to go through my list. Basically, we are going to need a warrant article for the remainder of the funding for Maple Street. So we're going to need that one. Another question that we had brought up, and I will probably discuss it, but in the meantime, the discussion had come up whether or not we want to get rid of section 4.4 in our bylaws. So if anyone's bored and you have a rainy day and you feel like looking at 4.4, we'll be discussing that sometime in the next month or so. The next item was to ask the Odessa special permit money to be put on a separate line in the budget. So Gino, do you know the status of that?
No, only that, you know, if we agree to go forward with that, it needs a town meeting vote. So we just need to submit a.
Okay, could I make a request, Gino? Could you just run that by the select board? And I mean, I don't want our board to vote on it and have Jeff go, no, we don't want it. And he might have a very good reason not to want it. So could you just ask them? We had talked about it 6 months ago. It's not going to affect the budget, but it'll show future planning boards that this money is sort of growing and it's really earmarked for traffic safety. And I want to make sure that in the future, it's kind of not forgotten about because it really hasn't been used in about 10 years. Correct, Gino?
Yes.
So just get a sense of what they think about it, and then we can discuss it. And then if they're okay with it, then it'll come back to us and we can say, do we want to pursue this? And we can talk about the benefits. I don't think there's really any downside to it. Do you, Gino?
I don't know.
Okay. Another item that we had talked about, because I have somebody who's also shows continued interest in being an associate member. So I had mentioned about 6 months ago or so, maybe we would go to town meeting and ask for a second associate member. This is not going to happen, and Gino's going to tell you why.
Chapter 48, section 9 says, one associate member may be authorized when the planning board consists of 5 members, and 2 associate members may be authorized when the planning board consists of more than 5. When I only count up to 5 members plus 1 associate member.
Yeah.
So
And anyhow, it was a thought that I had. Gino looked into it. It's not going to happen. And the last item that I can think of is I'm going to reach out to the chair of the Board of Health, and I'm going to reference the citizens petition from last town meeting. I think the changes that they were seeking can be done solely within the Board of Health regulations. But I had said, if there's something that we can do and work together, and I do not think it's going to be a warrant article, but you know, I'm not going to wait until we run out of time and then find out I should have done something. So I'll reach out to the Board of Health and I'll find out if there's something they would like to work jointly with. And if it requires a warrant article, the board will know about it, because I'm gonna, probably the first meeting of October, I'll let you know with the Board of Health if there's any assistance they require of us. Can you think of anything else that we might need to line up for a warrant article, Gino?
No,
Okay. So we just need to find out about Odessa. We need to, as a board, we need to decide about 4.4, and we need to find out what the Board of Health wants to do, and then Maple Street. Updates on ongoing development projects. Gino, do you have anything to report?
no.
Okay. Town planner report. Do you have anything under?
I do have one item on that.
Oh, good.
Very minor, simple item, but as you may know, in the First Parish Church, there is cell telecommunications equipment in the steeple there.
Yep.
And I think it's T-Mobile is now proposing to move, and I think it really means replace, but to move their facilities from, and I don't know the architectural terms. You know, the steeple has kind of a base that's rectangular or square, and then it has the top part. They want to move the equipment further up in that structure.
The spire.
The spire. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yep.
It's all interior, so it doesn't, you know, affect the aesthetics or anything. But because it's on the National Register of Historic Places, and I remember this when they first put that stuff in there, they had to go to National Park Service for permission, and it took months. And they ended up, if anybody noticed at the time, they ended up removing that whole structure on the top of the church, which was made of wood, which does not transmit the signal very well, and replaced it with, I guess, fiberglass or some similar material. So what you see today is not what was the original part of the church. And just as an aside, I believe that original part of the church is in George Fisk's barn, the one that's right off North Main Street, kind of behind Abbey Road and such. Anyway, that's it. It was just if we had any comments, because it has to go through this historical commission review. We got notice that if we wanted to make a comment, so I bring that up for that purpose.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think whatever they need to do. Does any of the board members have any thoughts or concerns? I will take that as a no. Do we have any reports on meetings with other boards, Gino? Does any board member have anything to report?
I had a couple of things.
Please.
I don't know if I reported on this at all before, but I had a request to go and talk to the MWRTA about their bus services. You know, we don't currently have any bus service there. And apparently there's a family with a disabled child who was interested in finding out whether there could be any bus service. So I have spoken to them about that. I've gotten some information about it. They talked about, I've got some information about the costs, which are substantial to get any level of service, even though it's a large proportion of it is subsidized at the federal level. There's still very substantial costs to the town to have either scheduled service or on-call service of those buses you see driving around, little like 10-passenger buses. So I'll if the board has any interest, I could give you a more detailed report at another time about sort of what the possibilities are.
Have those buses ever come into town in the past?
Yes, I don't recall the exact dates. I'd have to look in my notes about it, but they briefly did. I think it was what they call point-to-point service. They had service from Sherborn Center to, I think it was to the West Natick train station.
Okay.
And like one bus in commuter hours. And it was not at all heavily used, and it was just not enough ridership to support it. And so they got rid of it after a while. The other is that on one of their routes that goes to like Ashland and a couple other towns from Framingham to Ashland, they briefly had a stop at one of the developments in town. And I'm sorry, I can't even remember right now which one it is, whether it was the one up on Kendall Street or the one down on Washington Street near the Holliston line. They very briefly had a bus stop in one of those. And then they also, I guess they had effectively 0 people getting on and off there. So they canceled that. But there's quite substantial costs. The town does pay a certain amount of money to the MBTA each year. I think it's $30,000.
Yep.
And that can be used as a credit for MWRTA services. So it's kind of like effectively, if we did decide to contract with them for some services, it's sort of effectively would mean, I believe, that the first $30,000 wouldn't actually cost us anything, and we'd have to pay for the amount above that.
Now you have me curious. So, I mean, like, what would it take if, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, I'm just curious, if we wanted to have service from Woodhaven to Roach Brothers twice a week? I mean, do they do something as infrequent as that? Do you know?
I think so. Hang on a second. Let me look up my notes on that. I think so. There's basically 5 different kinds of service available. They have fixed route schedules, which there's a bunch of towns that participate in that, and most of those run, throughout the day. So they just, there's a bus every 30 minutes or every 40 minutes or whatever on a fixed route. And they run like, 12 hours or 10 hours a day. There's also something called shuttle service, like commuter shuttles, which are kind of like what you're saying. They're like a fixed route, but they're much more limited. They're typically something, maybe 2 buses a day, maybe only a few days a week. You can arrange for that kind of service. There's also there's a demand response service called Dial a Ride, which is a shared ride reservation service, and it's available for over 65 and disabled passengers, not for everyone.
Yep.
And it's seriously expensive. So it costs, I think actually during the pandemic, they were waiving fares, but the fare on it to the person using it is like $2 or $3 or something like that. But then the community that they live in gets billed like $40 or $50 per ride. So it's something that can very quickly add up if you have that service.
You know, the town also has through the COA, the Kennedy taxi service that will provide rides for a little bit more than $2 or $3 per ride. But, you know, I think maybe ultimately one would have to look at the cost structures of both to see which one is the more affordable. But Kennedy gives us a special price for seniors that would have to go, for example, from Woodhaven to a doctor visit or to the grocery stores on a, you know, irregular basis like that. So that is another potential option anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. No, because if there was something like that, that would be affordable to seniors in town. I don't know. It's interesting to talk about. Do you have anything else, Rob?
The only thing I'll just mention is that Gino had sent me an email about the Metro West Trail Summit with Mass DCR that happened up at the state park in Hopkinton, and I attended that. And there was some interesting information there, and I got to meet the director at in Framingham, their director of their community development and planning, who has done a lot of their negotiation with CSX on like the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and such. So I'm trying to get some more information from him about the process of working with CSX and see if any of that is applicable to the rail line over on the west side of Sherborn, if we have any opportunity to move forward on that and develop that.
That would be great. That would be great. All right. Thank you, Rob. Does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss?
If you don't mind, I'd like to raise my hand one more time.
Please.
And while Sean is here, I'd like to give kudos and to Sean. He's done a lot of work in the southern part of town. He has fixed the intersection where Whitney and not Hollis, what's the other one? Mill Street come together, and he's made that intersection more perpendicular. And then the going just a little bit further down Mill Street, the Mill Street to Woodland going down south, he squared that intersection off and improved that intersection. And then he's taken the next intersection going down, which is now West Goulding to East Goulding, and he has made that, instead of a dog leg, he has really made it you have to make a left turn, right turn to get on that. And so that's really great. It is really nice there, and he's done a really great job. And I think some of that was also on the prioritization plan. So do we need to look at that? Does anything need to happen with that? I see Sean on here, whether, we need to apply for any grants or need to cross it off of our prioritization plan list, or what would need to happen with that?
I don't think we have to take any action. I mean, those were getting repaved. And again, I noticed it too. It's much safer. The crossing is narrower. It forces people to slow down before they make the turn. So yeah, so I think it looks wonderful, but I don't think there's any action on our part at this time. But I am in agreement. I noticed these things and they look great. Yeah, so he's doing a great job. Does anyone else have any other comments? All right, I told you this would be a fast one. So take a look at the final guidelines under Section 3A of the Zoning Act. Be prepared to have a pretty robust discussion at our next meeting. And if you have any questions, send them to Gino. We will keep you updated with 90 Maple as things occur. And we will be talking about 124 Bogastow Brook at our next meeting as well. So Gino, do you have anything else to add? Oh,
No.
Sorry, I just
I
had
heard
one
him.
question. Are
Yep.
we still planning to discuss the towns with the water and sewer projects for the next meeting? Do you want us to have those reports ready for the next meeting? I think we'll have time.
Sure.
Okay,
So if Gino, if you'll put that on the agenda, Gino,
Absolutely.
all right. Did I miss anything, Gino?
I don't think so.
Is there anything else that any of the board members would like to discuss? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Rob,
All right.
Frank,
Aye.
Addie May,
Aye.
and I don't know if Will's on. Is Will on?
Yes, he
Yep,
is.
I'm on. Aye.
Will? All right. Everyone have a great evening. You got some homework to do. And if anyone has nothing to do 1 o'clock on Thursday and wants to join us, would love the company, but let Gino know. All right. Everyone have a great night.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Aye.